All right, guys. Appreciate you all joining us this evening. Sorry about last week. We had somebody, our guest last week, they had to medical emergency or whatever, so they had to take a break. And I said, well, you know what? They're taking a break. I'm taking a break too because I ain't took a break for several months. But we're back this week, and we have Enoch Graham from the Urban Gardener. Very happy to have him on with us this evening. And Enoch, thank you for joining us this evening.
Absolutely, Ryan, man, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me on your live cast. It'd be
Yes,
great to
sir.
it's great to
So,
talk to you.
kind of want to talk about several things this evening, but first, let's just get who you are and what you do on your channel and on your Instagram.
All right, yeah, well, obviously, my name right there, Enoch Graham. Our channel is the Urban Gardener on YouTube, the Urban Gardener One on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. We have a growing group, all that sort of stuff for our channel. And yeah, I am just a small space urban gardener, as the name would suggest, and well, started gardening well over 12 plus years ago in an apartment I lived in. And I had a friend of mine give me like this little cucumber start. And obviously, if you can tell in the background there, I grow a lot of house plants and I've always really done that. Just loved growing indoor plants pretty much my whole life. But later on, in life, I had this friend give me this cucumber start, and I never grew anything that was food. I never grew
Right.
food before. And so, I mean, I knew enough about plants that, okay, this thing needs to go outside. Got it a big pot, stuck it out on this balcony I had for my apartment. And that thing just blew up, grew all over this balcony. I had all of these cucumbers, and it was just like this huge light bulb that went off in my head when we were harvesting these cucumbers. My daughter, she loves cucumbers. So we're eating these cucumbers, and she was just completely fascinated with the fact that I actually grew those out on the balcony. She's like, "You grew these? These didn't come from a grocery store. These didn't come from, anywhere. I grew these." And at that point in time, it was just like, you know what? I think I found my new thing. I want to grow food. I want to find out how to grow it in smaller spaces. Because, like I said, all we had was that balcony. And so we moved on. Of course, tomatoes are the next thing. We're trying on the balcony. We're growing pepper plants. I was doing all sorts of greens, just trying all different things on this balcony. And it was just really kind of fascinating to see how much I was actually able to do. And then later on, eventually, I moved down here to where I live now in Southern Oregon. And just right outside of this city, Medford, Oregon. I live right outside of the downtown, and I got this little, I have a little rental space, and it only had this like cemented back patio. Also,
Right.
I have I live on these alleyways, but that kind of came on later. But I had the cemented back patio, and I was like, I got more space than this balcony, but it was only just a little bit more. It's like 10 by 10.
Right.
And so from there, I was just digging into all sorts of different kind of containers, building these elevated raised beds, and bringing in container trees, and just growing year in year out. And in fact, I also have this really flat carport that we have out the back. And so with the limited space, I saw this flat carport roof as like an opportunity. So I went up there and started taking these earth buckets, these wicking buckets that I had, and took them up on top of this roof. And I think I started with maybe 10 and eventually got up to like 30 or 40 different plants that were growing up on the roof.
That's
And
cool.
then my neighbor, who my first year living here and starting that garden in the back, my neighbor was actually growing this really cool garden with these massively tall, like Mexican corn stalks, and all this sort of stuff right along in the alleyway. And I was like, oh man, there's all of this space too in the alleyway. So from there, just kind of growing, and trying to expand my space into these, what would be limited spaces for other people, and trying to experiment and do different things with growing to find out what could be done in these sort of spaces. And eventually, everybody just started taking notice. I mean, I started a Facebook group for my local community here, And also I had a bunch of neighbors, friends, family, all sorts of people who just pass by, come through, and see what I'm doing, and just constantly, because I'm out there all the time, so they're
Right.
constantly stopping me, asking me questions about all the different things growing on, and all of that. And I had a couple of people who just kind of mentioned, like, you need to like share or make videos for this stuff, and I don't know why I didn't think about it either myself, because I'm such a big fan of YouTube. As you can
Right.
see here in the background, right here, right in the background, I got my
Yep.
YouTube thing. But I was a big fan of YouTube. I followed a lot of these YouTube gardeners, and so, I was just like, you know what, maybe I should try to show people the sort of stuff that I was doing. And that was, I think, about 6 years ago. And, been growing and doing that stuff ever since, as far as making all sorts of videos. And ultimately, I do have like a journalism background from college and all of that. So,
Okay.
one of the things I really wanted to do is also kind of tell stories as myself about other people and their experiences. And so one of the things I've done on the West Coast, I haven't had a chance to expand much from the West Coast, but going, from Seattle all the way down to Los Angeles, I'd go and visit other gardeners and these cool garden projects and places, like Los Angeles Compost. I went to visit them. There's a really cool, like a community gardening type place in San Francisco that I've done some videos, just all sorts of them. So I did all these sort of things. And then this last year, we decided to put our focus into a weekend gardening live cast that we do on Saturday mornings, where I get the chance to continue doing that, kind of meeting people and interviewing people.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing we've been doing now every Saturday, at 11 a.m. Pacific time on our channel. And we had some really awesome guests, from all over the gardening community, some really cool people. And it's been really fun, man. I've been enjoying this whole garden adventure. And here I am right here, man. Heavenly
Yeah.
Hills Homestead, right here with Ryan, man. This is great.
It's awesome, man. It's such an amazing story. How you went from growing just house plants, right, to somebody giving you a cucumber. Because isn't that essentially what it is that sparks the interest? There's always something. Anytime that I get interesting people like yourself on, there's always something that sparked the interest to say, you know what, I could be doing something else that's way cooler, or get me out of my shell, out of the box, and
Mm-hmm.
and it just kind of blooms and blossoms from there, right? And
Yeah.
turns into something that's just awesome,
Yeah, I
Um,
never would have expected it. I
no,
never would have expected that I am where I am today, doing what I'm doing with gardening. Even when I was first building and doing some of this small space gardening I was doing here in Southern Oregon, over those first couple of years of gardening and growing food, I just, I never expected that, I'd be where I am today and doing the things I'm doing. And it's just been such a thrill.
right. And that's just awesome, because you've took this, you know, putting stuff on a roof. You know what I mean? Like, not many people would have thought, well, we'll put stuff on the roof. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Most people would have been like, no, we ain't going up on the roof.
Yep.
But you've went alleyways, growing. You see a little somebody he was growing corn. You said in the alleyway, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's all about inspiration, right? And ideas. And
Yep.
I love the fact that you share that on YouTube, because essentially, I've heard this a lot of times. You're never going to find something new on YouTube, right? There's
Right.
always somebody that's already done it, right? Now, whether it's a spin on it or whatever, right? But the thing is you find so many new ideas. They might not be new out in the community, but they're new to
Yeah.
you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's what I love about it, because we get to share what we're doing, how we're doing it, and it shows people that there's not just one way to do it. You don't have to have a big swath of land, or
Mm-hmm.
a huge garden, or a half an acre or a quarter acre. You can grow it on your patio. You can grow it on your roof. Whatever you have, you can grow on, right? And
Yep.
that is the beauty of being able to homestead, grow, whatever you want to call it. You can make the best of what you've got in any situation, right?
Yep.
And you're doing it out there. I mean, there's not a ton of people who are going to say, well, I live in an apartment and I'm going to try to grow something, right? They're
Yeah,
going to be like, well, I live in an apartment. There's no room to grow anything, you know?
exactly. And I would have thought the same myself too, until it just by chance, a friend kind of nudged me on my way, in a
Right,
sense. You never know what'll happen with some of those unexpected moments or those unexpected things, in the
right.
long run.
That's
And
very true.
and yeah, I mean, and to me it's just been awesome. I mean, the idea of, again, too, being able to, a lot of people in cities, a lot of people in smaller spaces and all of that who do this I feel limited to their abilities of what they can do. And there are,
Right,
and I'm going to try to say that there are certain levels of limits. Like you said, we don't have a big bunch of land. I can't grow all of these sort of things and as much as I would really like to, but there
right,
is a ton that I actually can do. and
right,
there's a and a lot of people will take a look at a balcony space and just be like, okay, again, I can't do anything with that. Or maybe even just like a little side strip to, like, an apartment place that they live, that they could put in some containers or something
right,
and grow a bunch of peppers or tomatoes and all of that. And that's just one of the things that, once I felt inspired by the things that I was learning and figuring out, I just knew that that's what I wanted to focus on, was trying to show people that there's more that you can do in a city kind of landscape. And again, too, one of the things I've also done as well is community gardening. Now, if you
right,
don't actually have any space, but maybe you're on the south side of your apartment complex with your balcony and it gets no sun, and it's just you are limited to what you can do. That's all those sort of things. I try to show people, like, okay, well, go find a community garden space, and if you don't have a community garden space, go start one.
right,
Find a way to start one, get some people around who might have a similar interest, go start one. Or one of the other things I've tell people too is, if you live in a city, there's a lot of people who have backyards and front yards and things that they wouldn't do anything with. So
right.
I actually did this one of my in the first couple of years, because I was looking to expand into some in-ground space. I went and just posted a little note at the local library, like saying, "Hey, does anybody have any space I could borrow to grow a garden? I'll
There you
share
go.
my food with you."
Right,
So there's all sorts of these options for people who live in a more urban type of setting to be able to, grow food for themselves, which I think is one of these big important things that I think we should be able to do and
yep,
should try to achieve as much as we can. I still got to shop and buy a lot of the stuff that I have, but you know what? I try to grow as much of, my own organic, nutrient dense food right out of my own, spaces.
right,
And a lot of people can do that.
right. And you mentioned going and starting these communities. You post it in the library. You can post libraries, grocery stores, post offices, all those places, and
Hmm.
try to get, because there are, believe it or not, there are tons of people who are probably just like some of the viewers at home who don't have anywhere to grow or any of that, and they're just like, well, I don't have anywhere, I don't have anybody, but I guarantee you start posting online, Facebook or putting up stuff at the post office and stuff like that, you're going to get those people who said, hey, yeah, I'd like to do it too. And you're going to find homeowners, and probably be maybe more towards your more elderly people who can't do that anymore for themselves, but they
Hmm.
remember the times when they would get the garden vegetables, right? And they say, hey, yeah, you can use my spot to do it on, because you're going to share it
Yeah.
with me, and because I remember that. The other thing that I would mention is, I would say that gardeners who grow in containers and urban gardening like yourself are probably better gardener. Hang on one second. Sorry, y'all. Hey, you two know the rules, and you're being loud. Book it to my room, please. Thank you. Sorry.
That's
So,
all right.
but I would argue that the majority of these growers who are growing in containers and stuff are probably better suited to grow in ground when they get that opportunity, because they've had
Oh
to
yeah.
face so much adversity to be able to be successful in container gardening. And so
Yep.
when they get loose on a plot of land, they really kill it. I mean, they just smash it.
Yep.
So it's so, because they have to learn so much about not having soil that's going to be aerobic because they put too much water in these containers, and all
Yep.
these different things that container growing, kind of limits you to, right? And
Hmm.
I've seen it time and time again. When they break loose and they get in soil, they just do great. So never, never, if you have to start in containers, never look at it as, oh, well, I have to start in containers, and stuff, and think that it's a bad thing, because that learning curve is a tremendous help for you later on down the road. Have you
Yeah,
seen
yeah.
that to be true too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a real key to a lot of things when you're growing in containers. Like I mentioned too, we built up these elevated raised beds, so they're up off of the ground. Kind of got legs on them, and those are basically containers too. So you got to be on top of a lot of stuff when you're trying to build soil biology and good healthy soil in order to make sure that your plants can thrive in these containers. If you are like myself, an organic gardener, I don't I want to make sure that all of the stuff I'm growing is as clean as possible.
Right.
And again too, you can find those frustrations, and I certainly did in those first couple of years of trying to find that balance of what I can do, how do I care for all that sort of stuff when it comes to the containers themselves. And then this last year, I got to, and I have got some in-ground alleyway spaces, and there's limitations to that as well too. I mean, pest problems are amazing, but I did get to finally at a friend's place this last year, and this year we cut out two 20-foot by 40-foot plots out of his corner front yard that he's got,
Oh, yeah.
and because he wanted to kind of test the idea of starting a little urban micro farm.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we did. And so one of the things that I've always kind of had a issue with was growing onions. Now I've grown some okay onions, out
Right.
of containers, even in some of the in-ground raised beds that we have along the alleyways. I've grown some, they've only gotten so big. We got into this plot, this, growing in row, doing the whole kind of rows and doing all
Right.
of that, and planted out onions this year. And I've never grown onions as big as the ones that we've got this year. I mean, they're just monsters. So there is that difference. I mean,
Right.
container gardening, you're going to be limited to the size of certain things. Like you can't grow big full size tomatoes out of a lot of containers, unless of course you can get bigger containers and get some of that. And I've had some of those, but if you're dealing with small spaces, it's hard to have big large containers. But so again, I was always limited to certain size tomatoes till I could get into the ground, and then I can get
Right.
these bigger giant tomatoes that have grown before. And those sort of things are true about container gardening, and then the ability to move into an in-ground space. But I produce a lot for what
Right.
I have as far as the small space I have. If I was just limited to that 10-foot by 10-foot patio that I've got in the back, there's so much I can produce out of that,
Right.
just for myself and my home.
Now, you mentioned soil biology and organic growing, and I love those things. It's
Hmm.
very important to have organic growing, and it's very important to have that soil, that microbiology in the soil that can help with the growing of organic, or doing organic growing. So, what are
Yeah.
you using? I use extreme gardening products like Mycos, Azos, Versity, things like that. Are you using those types of things, or are you just getting your microbiology through different avenues?
Yeah, well, I just, for me, I try to keep my stuff as easy as possible for most people, in those sort of situations. So I've really tuned in the idea of building my soil through. I do have like a small like alleyway compost pile that I have.
Okay.
I do have like a bin compost that I have as well. Um, we've built up like worm farm,
Awesome. Yeah.
vermicompost, that sort of stuff, and just basic balanced dry fertilizers.
Okay.
I want things to be simple for people to kind of work with, instead of like all trying to do chemistry in a sense with all these different products that you can get and build up certain things. And that's really, that's really one of the things about, growing organically, again, too, as you mentioned, is that we want the best soil biology that we can possibly produce. I mean,
Right.
you're not going to have successful plants, especially in containers, if you're not truly paying attention to what you're doing with that soil in order to ensure that you got all those little things in there,
Right.
microorganisms, those nematodes, that fungi, all that sort of stuff, all got to work together. And you've got to produce a space for them to work together.
Right.
And then when your soil's thriving, your plants are thriving.
That's
And
right.
that's what I always tell people. Your focus really, truly, before you worry about growing plants to the best that you want them to be, is to really produce and maintain good soil. And that's important in all gardening situations.
Yes, it
Doesn't
is.
matter, all gardening situations. But when it comes down to growing in containers, it's really important, you
Right.
know.
Now, what kind of containers are you using? Because I know there is. If you go online right now and you type in container gardening or on YouTube, you're going to find a ton of information out there, right?
Hmm.
But what have you found as far as containers go to be some of your favorite or your go-to containers? Because you got, let's go over. You can grow in a 5 gallon bucket if you want, right? Drill some
Absolutely.
holes in it and grow in that. You can get some of that. You can build your raised beds, right?
Yeah.
The elevated ones with wood or other things, right? There's
Hmm.
several other things you can bake them out of. You can also just take a chicken wire fence or rabbit wire fencing and
Fabric
fence.
pots.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And smart pots, right? Smart
Yep.
pots are
The
woven
smart
fabric
fabric
pots,
pots. Yep.
or yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, there's so many different ones that you can do. What is your go-to pots, or the ones that you think your plants do the best in?
Yeah. So in general, again, as I was mentioning about, like, if you're really seeking to grow like tomatoes and you want good size full slicer type tomatoes, you're going to want a larger size pot for those sort of things. But in general, everything else that I've actually grown, um, maybe besides corn, I've done some corn and some 5 gallon, but I promote on my channel using earth buckets. Now, these
Okay.
are a water wicking bucket. Now, one of the things about those buckets is that they're good on so many levels.
Right.
you know I know there's a lot of people who have an aversion to plastic and that sort of stuff, and the world has too much plastic when it comes down to it, and I agree
Right.
with that sort of stuff. But these buckets are being used all over the place and tossed out by bakeries, restaurants, supermarkets,
Yep.
all sorts of places are using 5 gallon buckets, and they're just, like I said, tossing them out. So for me, I looked at those, and when I first started building my container garden, I worked for a place that was tossing out a bunch of these buckets, and I was like, man, I could just reuse these. And so instead of these heading out wherever they're heading, possibly the landfill,
Right.
I could bring them home and reuse them and give them another purpose for a few years. Of course, they are plastic again too, and being out in the sun, they
They'll break.
will break down after a while.
Right.
So I've gotten about 5, 6 years off of some of them, but that's a good way to like repurpose something.
Right.
And then so I just started with a basic, just drill some holes in a 5 gallon bucket, and that's what I started with to begin with. And then as I was doing more, again, big fan of YouTube, so I'm always watching and checking things out and stuff, and I've ran across this idea for an earth bucket. And just, it's basically putting two buckets together, one of them with a big hole and a net pot in the bottom, and the other one being for a reservoir to hold
Okay.
water in. You put a PVC pipe through it, going down
Right.
into the reservoir, so you can feed the water in. And that way you've got basically, like your bottom feeding these plants
Right.
by putting water into this reservoir. And so I got a bunch of these buckets together for free,
Right.
not just from the place I work, but I checked out a bakery, a supermarket near me had a bunch of them out in the back, and I was like, hey, can I take those? And they're like, oh yeah, absolutely, have all you want. And so I did, and I brought a bunch of these home, bought some of these net pots. You can buy in them, buy them in about 20 bulk, 20, 40, that sort of thing. And got the PVC. And the most expensive thing was getting that hole driller for the 3-inch hole.
Oh yeah, that's a
But
big. That's
you invest in that right there, and then the rest of that stuff, you can make these 5-gallon wicking pots for less than $1 a piece, around 75 cents a piece. Now, of course, you can just get do the regular 5-gallon buckets if you can obtain those, drill some
right,
holes in them, and do that sort of thing. And if you live maybe more in the north and you're not dealing with so much heat during the summertime, those are pretty easy to maintain. But where I live in Southern Oregon, and a lot of people who live more in the South deal with more of this extreme heat that, especially has been building up more and more. I found that these things were not only these great containers, but they also were really working for me in a sense. All I had to do is fill these things up every 3-4 days, and that was pretty much the watering I needed to do for these buckets. Whereas I
right.
was out during the summertime twice a day trying to keep the regular 5-gallon buckets hydrated.
That's
And
crazy.
you don't want to let if you're container gardening, you do not want to let that soil dry up.
Right,
Again, as we're talking about building soil biology, you're going
right,
to kill off a bunch of soil biology. You're going to really stress out roots by letting them go dry. So I found these earth buckets to be just an amazing addition to what I was doing in my container gardening. And so they're all over the place when it comes to my garden.
that's cool, man.
I got them all over. I really highly promote them on my channel. I think they're
Eh,
just a great way for small space gardeners to be able to you know maintain a lot. And again, you can grow almost anything in these. I've grown watermelon. Again, back to the onions.
Watermelon. That's
Yeah,
insane.
again, you don't want the big
Right,
watermelon,
right, right. But I
that
mean,
sort of
even
thing. But
even
they're
if you were getting, a volleyball sized watermelon, that's
mhm,
crazy. You
yep.
know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right now in the back, there's cantaloupe growing out of them, cucumbers, eggplants, peppers, tons of peppers. I got peppers everywhere. I love growing peppers. All sorts of things. If there's something I've tried growing it in these 5-gallon, uh, you earth buckets,
Right.
these water wicking containers. And yeah, I they are my go-to. They are what I advise and promote to anybody to try. And again, too, one of the things I also say is that I challenge people, even if you're getting those standard nursery pots, 5-gallon size or any other size, go check out the price,
Yep.
go look at the price of those things. And for me, I'm always looking at trying to find a way to do my gardening more so on a budget. I want things to be easier and less expensive for people, because those are another aversion to gardening that people find that really finds it to be prohibitive to them, is when they look at expenses of things.
Right. And
And
and then they go, well, it's not cost effective for me because
mhm.
I can go to the store
Yeah.
and buy this. Never mind the fact that the stuff that's at the store is probably polluted with all kinds of stuff we don't want
Mhm.
to. If we
Yep.
knew what they grew that stuff with and put on it, we would have an aversion to that. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
we would say, who cares about the cost of gardening, right?
Yep.
But because we don't see what they put on and we don't see what they use at the stuff we buy at the store, we say, well, we can buy it for a whole lot cheaper than what we can do gardening ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that you try to find a way to be cheap, or not really cheap, but to do things on a on a budget that's friendly for everybody, no matter what kind of budget you're on, right?
Yep.
I mean, you're making these earth buckets for 75 cents a piece. That is really, really cheap. And like you said, you're not
Mhm.
going to find these nursery containers, right? Those
Yep.
real thin plastic ones that are going to break down in a year. Okay.
Yep.
You're not going to find them for 75 cents. I don't care where you look.
Yep. Yep.
You're going to pay out the wazoo for something like that. I
Yep.
would say, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the flimsy 3 gallon one. I mean, I'm talking flimsy, like it's like the water bottles that we drink from
Right.
nowadays, right?
Exactly.
Like that kind of material. I think they were 7.98 here for a 3 gallon, right?
Yep.
It's like 7.98 for one 3 gallon pot that's going to break down but probably before the end of the season,
Yep.
And yeah, no, we're not paying that. I'll use a milk jug if I'm going to do that, right? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, we're not paying that. So I love that you're growing that stuff and being cheap. Well, not cheap, but again, cheap about it, so everybody can kind of
Yeah.
glean from that and be like, okay, well, I don't have to be Rockefeller to grow a garden. I can grow it, for a fairly good budget and
Yeah.
seed saving and all that. Do you save your seeds or do you
There
start
are
over?
there are things that I grow to save seed. I'll let certain things seed out so that I'll get volunteers and stuff. I have like this really cool cherry tomato variety that
Okay,
I got from a fellow YouTuber years ago, and I just grow those out. I let the biggest ones ripen and fall off the plant, and allow them to just get right in the soil so that they come back and volunteer every year.
that's
And there's
awesome.
a lot of different things like radishes. I let those go to seed pods because the seed pods are actually really tasty. So if I grow a bunch of radishes, I'll harvest the radish that I want, leave a few of them so they'll go to seed, so that I can harvest the seed pods, and then some of those I let go and completely seed out and dry out so that I can save the seeds and grow those radishes out again the next year. Um, Also, peas. I like peas, but one of the things I like more than just the pea pods themselves is I like pea shoots, so pea microgreens.
Okay,
So I'll grow peas out just to get seed, from,
right.
and then I'll take all of that seed I save up from all the peas I grew, and then that's something I'll grow throughout like the more of the off season, that I can have extras that I'll grow in microgreens indoors in the house. And so all sorts of stuff like that. Some plants that'll just go to seed, also, again, save seed for microgreens during the wintertime, and all sorts of things like that. I just, you know I don't save seeds for things like peppers. I grow so many varieties of peppers. I'm just, I I
Ah,
did have an interesting cross one year that, I gave a taste test for on one of my videos, and it totally surprised me.
I
But
I
that's
grow
the thing
like
I thought of when I first thought of saving seeds, was like, I try to avoid things that really need to be isolated,
right.
because I'm in a small space, so I'm trying to cram as much in as possible. So, when it comes to those sort of things, I won't save those seeds, but a lot of things I do.
Well,
As much as I
so
can.
what I do is especially when it comes to peppers, tomatoes not so much because tomatoes to cross pollinate. I mean, yes, they can do it, but if you think about it, because I breed peppers and tomatoes, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
if like they can cross, that's absolutely fact. They can do it.
Yep.
Tomato peppers are a little bit more easier to cross than a tomato is. Tomatoes are
Oh
very,
yeah.
very, very hard to cross
Yep.
pollinate on purpose, much less on accident, because
Hmm.
they literally got to hit that window just right for them to
That's
cross.
right.
But what I do with my peppers is I've got these little baggies that I've bought off of
Yep.
their little netters, and
Yep.
so what I'll say is, okay, I want this little pod right here, to be strictly what this is, because I'm going to save the seed.
Hmm.
So I'll put that little baggie over it and tie it up, pollinate it, and
Yeah.
save the seeds off of those. So if you ever wanted to save seeds, you can get them on Amazon, super cheap. You can just pick whatever size bag you want, and just put it
Yeah.
over one of the stems there, over a couple of the pods that are, getting ready to open. They're not open, they're going to. Stick them over, tie it off. You ain't got no problems because none of the pollen can get through that netting. The micro mesh is so
Yeah.
fine that it can't get through. So, and I've never had anybody complain yet that any of the seeds that I've sold them or gave them have come out
Right.
something different,
That's
So just in case you ever want to do it, you can get
Give
them
that a
on there.
shot. Yeah, yeah. I've thought about that before. Definitely. I would have to. I've got a couple of varieties that it would probably be worth trying to do something like that as well, for
Yeah,
sure.
I've got, I think it's 80 or 90 varieties out there this year growing of different peppers. And yeah, I'm out there putting bags on everything, and um,
Yeah.
it's getting kind of wild. But you mentioned winter time. So what is your winter like? I mean, do you guys get like here in West Virginia where I'm at, we're not growing in the wintertime unless it's inside or something that is frost tolerant.
Mm-hmm.
And we can maybe keep it alive in a greenhouse. Even then it's kind of touch and go, right? Because depending on the kind of winter we have, we might be able to get into December, but the
Yeah.
majority of sometimes we could grow all winter long, certain things. But there are those exceptions where some winters are just like, yeah, no, you're not growing past December on a cool weather crop. What kind of
Yeah.
winters are you guys having out there? What's your wintertime growing like?
Yeah, and then also one of the bigger limitations during the wintertime is just light availability. I mean, you
Right.
just show such short days that
Yep.
but yeah, so I try to get a lot of things. I'll as we're actually getting started to do here over this next week or two is starting indoors all of our kind of like cold weather crop stuff that we're going to do. Greens, spinach, some broccoli, um, cabbages, different things like that we're going to grow. And then, I'll try to get those to grow as much into the winter as I possibly can.
Right.
And then, when things are done, they just kind of shut down again. Like you said, December, get into December, mid-December, but, that's when we're going to start seeing some real freezes and some things like that are going to happen. And then through January and early February. So it's really only this short window where things just kind of slough off just a little bit, and then we're just restarting again after that.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you can grow into December some, right?
Hmm.
Then January, February, you're nothing, right? And then I guess maybe the end of February you start picking back up again.
Yeah, I mean, and there'll be some things just depending on how much they can survive, like the spinach. Just, spinach has been one of those best ones that have just been able to just sometimes it'll grow all through the winter.
Oh
And I
wow.
could, and the thing I haven't done that much of yet is actually starting to build, like some enclosures for some of these areas. And so those are some things I'm actually thinking about doing for this winter, seeing if I can't just create some enclosures, maybe do a little bit more, mulching, winter mulching, and
Right.
doing some things to really kind of just, you know, keep some plants going as long as I possibly can in the
Right.
area here. But again, too, it's also a time for me to kind of take a little bit of a break,
Right.
because I do so much growing and so much gardening throughout the rest of the year. And so we do have like some light stations here in the house and some things that, and I say break, I'm actually, I am indoors, I'm starting my pepper plants and I'm starting these sort of things, in late December, beginning of the year. We're doing microgreens indoors in the house, that sort of stuff, so I'm constantly trying to produce some sort of food throughout the whole
Right.
year, but it is that short little window that I just, kind of
Take a break.
take a break from the outdoor garden.
Now, you mentioned maybe building some enclosures and doing some winter mulching. What is that? What is that? What would that look like if you do it? Like what are you using maybe to enclose with, and what are you going to winter mulch with? Are you going to go get mulch and put down, or are you going to use hay, straw, something like that? What would you?
I got two big old trees right out front that dump so many leaves.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know what I mean? So
Right.
I got a, like one of those little blower mulcher type things.
Yep.
We'll just feed those leaves right through there and
That's
just kind of
great.
chop them up a little bit and pile them up nice and high, around whatever plants that we got. And then from there, I'd probably, of course, maybe use some sort of plastic covering,
Okay.
and, maybe build something where I can just kind of drape that over maybe one of the alleyway raised beds that I've got. And then I was thinking about one of the elevated beds that I have in the back. And then, just really trying to put some things around those sort of things in order to keep and make sure that we're given as much opportunity for that soil just to not completely freeze up.
Right. Right. I
Hmm.
mean, because
Like
that's
all those
always
containers, sorry, all those containers out there are getting hard as a rock. You know what I
right.
mean? Straight through.
That's what I was getting ready to say here. That's my biggest problem with the winter is
Hmm.
okay. So yeah, I can plant a cover crop. You know what I mean?
Yep.
The cover crop's still going to die off. You know, and
Yep.
I'm still left with hard compacted soil. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if there was some way that I could figure out how to grow something in the dead of winter for those
Yeah.
month and a half, 2 months that nothing really wants to grow, I
Yep.
could keep my soil pumping, keep it alive, keep those microbes going, right? And keep that soil loose to where I'm not having to go out there and beat myself over the head to till this
Mm-hmm.
stuff up or broad fork it, because
Yep.
I'm trying to move away from the tiller. I'm trying to move more toward the broad fork, but I've got heavy clay.
Yeah.
Well, you can't break it all up with a broad fork when it's heavy clay. But if there was a
Mm-hmm.
way to grow throughout the wintertime and really get that cover crop to grow and have some root crops growing in it, you could keep that microbes alive. You really keep that soil broke up. And so I was really interested to kind of hear like what you had in mind. And I'm glad that not glad, but I'm glad that I'm not the only one that gets hard soil during the wintertime. If you're getting it in raised beds and stuff
Yep.
like that, then I'm glad that I'm not the only one having to deal with it, because it's a bear to try to keep that soil active, moving, and
Mm-hmm.
loose to where you can deal with it, because no roots want to grow in hard soil. I've
Yeah.
told a lot of people this, and you probably know it, but if you've got hard compacted soil, that plant is putting so much effort to try to get those roots through that hard soil that it
Mm-hmm.
takes away from the top growth of the plant. So let's
Yeah.
say you're trying to grow a tomato plant. You got hard compacted soil, you put it down there in a hard compacted soil. If
Yeah.
it's trying to push those roots through that stuff and try to grow a top. Well, it's
Yeah.
taking away from the top growth to put the bottom growth in, right? Whereas if you
Mm-hmm.
have loose till, it can easily spread its roots through that loose till and grow and put all the energy, all the hard energy into growing that top up.
Yeah.
And so, it really is beneficial that we try to keep that soil loose throughout the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and again too, if clay and those sort of soils, which is I have to deal with a ton of out in our alleyway spaces, and it took me a few years to really, really start getting that soil to where I wanted it to be, and it was just each year just really introducing more and more compost, more and more organic material in there, because that's really one of the only things that's really going to break down a hard clay soil is just because even if you're tilling it up or you're doing those sort of things, that clay is going to still find its way back together again.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, so as you're tilling, you want to introduce a ton of good organic material into that soil so that you give that you can keep that clay
Right.
broken up the best you can and all that. And again, too, like you're saying, if you've got those hard pans underneath that with your soil, those roots are only going to go so far before they actually try to spread out
Right.
sideways or putting all that effort into going into that in
The
break it
heart
up
kill.
there.
Yep.
Yep.
So Jay says, in the autumn he's leaf greedy for mulch and compost and leaf mold process. So I take and over here in the woods beside me, I actually take my lawnmower over there. It has a bagger on it, and I just
Yep.
mow the woods. You know,
Yes.
and people are like, "What are you doing? Why are you there? There's nothing to mow over there. Why are you I'm collecting the leaf.
Yep.
I'm mulching the leaf up it's mulching
Hmm.
it up, putting it in the bagger. I take the bagger, empty it into the contractor bag, and then dump it all over my stuff out there, because it's the only way to get anything into that daggone soil to try to, like you said, break up those clay molecules.
Hmm.
And even at that, I mean, this is 3 years growing in this one spot, and it's still just as hard as rock now. And I've put compost in there. I've put tons of
Oh
leaves on
my.
there, grass clippings, everything. Right?
Yep.
It's a 80. Oh no, excuse me. It's 90 foot long, 22 foot wide, where I got my giant pumpkins at, and it is a
Yeah.
bear to try to get that
Wow.
broke up. So I've got to
Yeah, it
find
is.
different avenues, trying to put more things in there, kind of diversifying what I put in there. One guy mentioned last year said, just leave all your pumpkin plants in there the rest of the year. Then you go in through there and till it all in the spring and see what that does. And I was like, I've been told this whole time, rip the plants out, throw them away, burn them, whatever, right? Because the disease and everything that they had on them, you're just putting it right back in the soil. So
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'll try it this one time. Right. So I tried it this year. So far, I mean, yeah, the soil's still compacted, but so far so good. I ain't got no diseases or any of that stuff. It didn't really work like he was wanting it to work, but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
have any of the disease pressure. But what I have found has worked tremendously in some of the other areas has been biochar.
Mm,
Biochar has really helped me out a lot. I've started making my own biochar. I get the
yeah.
Asplunda. They're a company who trims trees and cuts trees down, and they mulch them all up right there on the spot. They always are looking for somewhere to dump it at. So I told them, dump every bit of it here in my yard. I'll take every
Hmm.
truckload you can get, every bit of it. And so
Yeah.
we've been making biochar out of that all summer long, on and off. And I've added that to several spots, and it's really helped those spots tremendously. So hopefully we'll have enough to add back here on that plot I was just saying about. But do you use biochar by any chance?
I haven't. I've been really interested in actually incorporating some of that into the things that I'm doing as well too, because again, there are tons of benefits from biochar,
Absolutely.
definitely. And yeah, that's definitely something again too, I've I experiment with things here and there when it comes to certain stuff, but I always keep like the base, like I was saying, the base kind of thing that I'm doing, compost, worm castings, and just a decent balanced dry fertilizer, organic fertilizer.
Right. So what organic
It's
fertilizer,
a lot.
pelletized fertilizer are you using?
um well, I've tried several different types over the years, but I have a person I met has a company called Ivy Organics. He's one of the people who really helped me out as I was first getting my channel started and everything. Just really great guy. It's a family company, named after their daughters and all of that. His wife runs the company. He does the promoting, all that sort of stuff. And I've been using their organic fertilizer for this last year or so, and it's really good. I like the results I'm getting from it. So right now, it's
Awesome.
kind of it's kind of the one that I'm out. If people are looking for recommendations, is to check out Ivy Organics.
Is it
And
like is it chicken manure based, or what's the base of it?
I really haven't gotten into looking at all those main ingredients.
Right.
And like I
You,
said, it's getting pretty deep into it, but
right.
it's good stuff. And I'll have to look at that. I know I got a bag around here somewhere. I have to look it up.
Oh, that's all right, man. It's okay. I was just kind of curious in case anybody would want to know,
Mhm.
because there's some that I use that are chicken manure based, and then there's other ones that I use that are like blood meal or bone meal base, and it's just kind of like a
Yeah.
conglomerate of those put together in a pelletized situation and stuff. So just kind of wanted to see what it was, but yeah, yeah, so your worm composting, your vermicomposting, then I guess essentially is what you would be doing.
Yeah, that's something I've started. I haven't actually put out any videos on it yet, but that was something that I'll be working on as we go in through the end of the season and into this next season. Is again repurposing 5-gallon buckets and building little worm farms and ag- and again too, tons of vermicompost built into my compost pile I've got in the alleyway, because every time I stick my hand down in there, I pull out just massive handfuls of worms and all that come out of there as well too. And then again too, like my first many years of growing, I would just always be purchasing worm castings, because it, just a great general that's a great general all-purpose fertilizer
It
when it comes
is.
down
It
to
is.
it. I mean, if that's all you're putting into your container small space gardening is vermicompost and worm castings, then you're off to a good start for sure.
Now, I tell you something that I have done here, and I haven't showed the video yet. I'm waiting. There's some things that I've got that I've been doing I ain't showed on the channel yet, but so some of these guys are going to hear about it.
Mhm.
But what I've done is I took a PVC pipe, okay, and made it, a foot and a half, 2 foot long, depending on where it was located at. And I
Yep.
and I bought caps to go on top of it. I drilled holes all the way around it. My yard is full of worms. If you go out there after it rains or after you've watered really heavily, you go out there at night and you will, with a
They're
headlamp
up
on, and
there.
you'll see, going all darting back in the ground. It's like,
Yep.
I've got all these worms. Why is my soil hard? Why do I have,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like you would think with all these worms, they'd be
Yeah.
pooping everywhere. My soil would be, now I've got very nutrient rich, dense soil, but again,
Yeah.
it's that clay, and they're
Hmm.
just not, it wouldn't matter how many worms you had, they just can't get rid of the clay, right? So
Yeah.
what I set out to do this year was I said, okay, they make these containers that you bury in a raised bed, right?
Yeah.
And you put your compost in there. The worms come to it and eat. There's holes in this container that you put in the raised bed. You bury it,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
put your stuff in there, and they come through and they eat that stuff, and then they go back through and poop it. So I said, well, now why couldn't I do that in my garden or in my raised bed, or not my raised beds, but in my pumpkin patches, right? So I take these PVC pipes, 1.5 to 2 foot long, shove them in the ground, have a cap to go on them, drilled holes all the way around them. Worms flock to them. They eat all the compost or the stuff that I'm composting out of them, and then they just kind of just distributed that throughout. And my thing with that is if it's going to take forever, to do. But if I'm constantly working on that soil, constantly attracting worms to eat there, right? So
Yeah.
they're not strung through all throughout my yard. They're located in certain specific spots in my yard to eat that composting material. Then I have essentially helped myself aerate my soil, which
Hmm.
it's hard to do with clay, but they're going to be there more frequently to eat that matter. So, you know what I mean? So I've done
Yep.
that. So, if you ever run into, situation out there in your clay where you're kind of, like, what
Yeah.
else can I do? Definitely try using those PVC pipes. Just bury them about 1 foot to 2 foot deep, right? Drill you a
Yeah.
bunch of holes in them to where the worms can get through, and just shove composting stuff down in there, and
Now,
they
what
will come.
size of PVC again are you
Eight
using?
inch, 8 inch pipe. I
Oh,
mean, you can
good
use
eight
six
inch.
inch
Yeah.
if you want to. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But if you can get the 8 inch pipe, if I could find bigger, doable would be a 12 inch one, right? If I could
Oh
find
yeah.
12 inch one at Lowe's with a cap, I would do that.
Mhm.
But I've not been able to find a cap yet for it. I guess I could make one out of wood. You know what I mean? And
Right.
put hinges on it or whatever. But I like
Hmm.
that snug fit from a
Yep.
PVC one on a PVC pipe. So
Yeah.
I haven't found a 12 inch one yet that has that. But if I ever do, I'll get that. But yeah, 8 inch ones, 6 inch ones work. 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch diameter hole is perfect. Is plenty of room for the worms to get in and out. And I just shove those full. I mean, just pack it full of compost. Like today, I harvested several more cabbages, and the leaves, the first few leaves around that aren't any good. So I'll take those leaves and I'll just stuff them down in those holes, or
Yeah.
I'll feed it to the rabbits or the goats, and then I'll go clean up their poop, later on, and I'll
Okay.
take and shove that poop down in there, right? I mean, and
Hmm.
it works. Worms love goat poop and rabbit poop. Every time you clean up
Yeah.
their poop, they're in there with it. So it really
Yeah.
helps out a lot, man. I've noticed significant change like in those areas. It's not throughout the whole soil yet, but just in those
Hmm.
localized areas, maybe 2 foot around those pipes, you can tell that there's a difference. The weeds
Yeah.
are growing more frequently. Not that you want that, but
Right.
that's a
It
sign
shows
that
you.
they're
It shows you. Yep.
right, exactly. And so just those little things is like, okay, this is working out. So just maybe a little something else if you want to
Yeah.
try to take care of your clay up there.
I'm
Um,
definitely gonna have to give that a shot and
it,
try
it, it,
something like that. And again, too, that's kind of where I'm experimenting a little bit with what I've got right now, and I want to do things going into this next season. As I'm, really want to push different little ideas that you can do as far as creating your own little worm farms, your own little things that you can do to produce your own vermicompost at home.
right.
And again, too, like you're saying, is just in the sense of going direct right to the soil. I think that's a really great idea.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, I actually kind of interested myself too, because you got up right now from almost homesteading. What is biochar?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
maybe I'll ask you that too, as well as explaining what you're doing and your process of making your biochar that you're doing for
Yeah,
your farm.
so biochar is essentially you can get biochar from your charcoal.
Yep.
Basically that's what biochar is. It's charcoal, right?
Hmm.
Not that I recommend going out and buying a bag of charcoal and crushing it up, but that is essentially what it is. It's crushed up charcoal. So what you're going to do is what I've done out here is, like I said, I took and got the guys from Esplenda to bring a lot of material here, trucks full of mulched up wood chips. Right now, you don't
Yeah.
have to use mulched up wood chips. You can use whole logs if you choose or whatever. It's just going to take a very long time to kind of break that down. Wood chips work better. And what I done the first time is I hollowed out the center of this huge mound of wood chips. I hollowed out the center, started burning boxes down in that center, and then started filling it back up with the wood chips, right? To smother that fire out. You don't want it fully engulfed and burning. You want it to just sit there and smolder. Now, if you live in a city or somewhere close by neighbors, they're probably not going to like you making biochar, because that one out there, I just had to put it out the other night because my wife said, okay, it's been going for 3 weeks. It's gotten in the house. I can't stand no more of it. The wind shifted directions and it came in the house, and she's like, I can't do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But because it does smell, it stinks. But the biochar does several things for it. It conditions your soil, right?
Yeah.
It helps hold on to nutrients. Okay. It also helps the nutrient exchange rate in your soil. Okay. So your CECs, your cation exchange rate, is going to be greater with that. Okay. We've noticed that when using biochar, we have grown heavier fruits to chart. Okay. So there are charts that we have for tomatoes, for giant pumpkins, things of those natures, that say, okay, if it is this measurement, then it should weigh this weight. And what we've noticed is we're coming in over that weight. Okay, so we're weighing more than what the chart says, and we give that a credit to the biochar, because it's got that cation exchange rate up at a higher rate. It also will add potash to your soil. So if you need potassium, it's adding the potassium to that. And then the other great thing that it does is it is a buffer, and it breaks down the soil, right? So you're adding the leaf mulch, you're adding in all these different things, the grass clippings and stuff, right? You
Mm-hmm.
add in this biochar that is, I mean, it's fine to sand, right? A lot
Yeah.
of times. Now there are times when it's a little bit chunkier, right? Because it might not have burnt as well, or might not crumble down as well. But it's giving that soil an air pocket. It's giving that soil a place to where it's not, at least for clay soil, it's not able to attach itself back. So you got a clay particle here, you got biochar particle here, and you got another clay particle over here, right? And so it's just helping keeping that broke up, kind of the same way you might use sand to break up um, clay. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend doing a lot of sand, because you use too much, you can kind of turn it into concrete.
Mm-hmm.
But you if you use a little bit of sand, you can help break up the clay. But this is just a more organic way, a more nutrient efficient way of feeding your beneficials, feeding the soil, making good soil as a whole. And it really works out. I love the way it's working for us. Now there is a company that I use, that I am sponsored by, so we'll go on ahead and say that.
Mm-hmm.
Wakefield Biochar does sponsor us with biochar that I have used specifically in the holes, like the planting holes, the transplanting holes of my giant fruits and vegetables. Okay. But for the amount that I need, there's just no way that they could sponsor that amount.
Right.
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 So
Yeah.
I have to make biochar too. Now, and that's not to take away from them. That's just to say, I grow a lot of stuff on a pretty big chunk of land, and they would be spending thousands and thousands of dollars to freight pallets upon pallets of this stuff. It's just not,
Yes.
there's just no way possible that I could ever ask or expect them to fulfill that. You know what I mean? So I do
Mm-hmm.
have to buy, I buy some from them. They give me some, and then I make my own too. So, the stuff that I'm making right now will go primarily in the giant patch, except for, like I said, where I grow like the transplanting hole. I'll put Wakefield biochar in that transplanting hole. But for the rest of the patch and for the garden, that will be left for the biochar that I'm making. So and then the rest of the stuff that I buy from Wakefield or get from them for free, I'll just put in my raised beds and stuff like that.
Awesome. Yeah, again too, I'm gonna have to try that myself for my gardens. And
It works. I mean, I really like, if you would have told if you would have asked me this, a year and a half ago, I'd have been like, I'm not buying it, because there was a
Mhm.
guy, I love him to death. He's usually in here. I don't know where he's at right now. Eric Hale. And he was like, man, you need to get into biochar. You need to get into biochar. You need to get, I'm like, dude, I ain't got time to do no biochar. I ain't got time to sit out here and burn a pile. And then when I
Yeah,
really got to looking at it, I was like, why don't I have time to just light a fire and walk away from it? It's just smoldering. You know what I mean?
right.
It's not hard.
You just
So,
get it started and walk away. Yeah.
right, exactly. And so I was like, well, all right. And I started looking into it. And then a really great grower from North Carolina, uh, he went super heavy to chart last year. I mean, he had this pumpkin, and it was a big pumpkin. I'm not taking away from it. But for the size of that pumpkin, for what it weighed, was tremendous. I mean, it was just like, what? Your pumpkin, my pumpkin are like 5 inches difference
Oh,
in total size. And you weighed like 250, 300 pounds more than me.
yeah.
Like, no, like, no, that was
That did
the
the
final.
convincing.
Yeah. And I just said, okay. So I went to him and said, so what did you do different? Biochar. Say no more. Say no
Wow,
more. And
awesome.
I'm seeing it this year. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to see it, but I highly recommend checking out. I got a giant rutabaga that is on track to be the world record. Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So Epic Gardening, I got a 24 by 24, a 24-inch by 24-inch raised bed from them, and it is almost touching this 24-inch by 24-inch raised bed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a massive
Like all the
rutabaga.
way. Jeez,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. Oh,
amazing.
it's a tank, and I've got other ones, and they're
Yeah.
big. I'm not. I mean, I had the state record last year. I grew a 19 pounder. Right, it was 19 pound 11 ounces. But these this year that have biochar on them are way. I mean, just way bigger. Right, and we're
Right.
a month ahead of where we were last year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm just like, these things are just. I'm going out there every day looking like, okay, are you done growing yet? Are you done? I'm getting a little worried, because last year about this time, you guys started going kaput on me and started having hollow rot disease and stuff, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and because I grew three, only one made it to a scale. The other two had hollow rot, and I'm out there and I'm like looking, and they're just growing and growing and growing. And I'm knocking on them because I know better now, right? Like I know things
Mhm.
to check, and I'm like, y'all seem solid as a rock, and you just keep going. I mean, that one out there is doing close to an inch and a half a day
Nice.
in circumference. And I'm
Wow.
like, you keep on, I'm gonna run out of raised bed for you. Like, what do I do then? But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, um, I highly recommend using biochar because it has made a world of difference. Even my giant pumpkins. So most people would say, well, that's a really big patch, 90 foot by 22 foot. For giant pumpkin growers, that is small because I'm growing 4 plants on that. Most
Oh,
giant growers would only grow 2, if that, because that's a total of 1,900 square foot. Most giant growers use 1,000 square foot per plant. Okay.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm growing 4 of them on there, and I've got the biggest pumpkins I've ever had growing out there this year, and the plants are 300, 400 square foot.
Oh,
And it's
nice.
the biggest ones I've ever grown. Day 30, day 20 measurements. Generally on a day 20 pumpkin, I'm about 60 to 80 pounds.
Right.
This year on day 20, I'm 140 to 160 pounds.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
You got some
big difference.
monsters growing there.
Right, right. So it's a huge difference. And the only thing I did differently was put biochar down. That was it. So,
Wow.
I mean, I really think that it works. I mean, if it didn't, I wouldn't promote it, wouldn't talk about it. But it has
Exactly.
changed a lot of stuff around here. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I've
what.
thought about it. I've thought about it for quite a while now. I know a couple of people who do biochar. A person actually I want to go and do an interview with down in Los Angeles, produces biochar. And so I've heard, read all about it, all that sort of stuff. Just haven't taken the opportunity to apply it to
Right.
my garden and what I'm doing. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm just gonna have to just jump in and get it done, as I'm
Yeah.
doing other things this, going into this next season and all of that. So, definitely something I'm gonna definitely look into for sure.
It is very, very good. And like I said, it's not hard to make your own. It's just having to let it kind of smolder. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
it smolders, and usually the smoke ain't real bad. It only gets bad whenever the wind picks up, right? And then like
Hmm.
starts carrying it around. Usually you don't even really see any smoke coming off of it. You'll see a little bit of
Yeah.
heat coming off of
Yeah.
it. And the other thing too that I do is I also compost in that. So
Hmm.
I had to take out some of the clay because I had to make a dry well for some stuff out there, and so
Yeah.
for runoff and stuff, water rain runoff and everything, I had to make a dry well, and so I took all that clay. I didn't want to put it back in my pumpkin patch, so I took it and threw on top of the biochar. Right. Well,
Yep.
all the chicken stuff goes on there, like all the chicken crap goes on there. When we clean out the chicken brooders from raising chickens and quails, all that goes on there. Everything goes on that pile, So it's not just a biochar pile; it's a composting pile too. So now when I
Yeah.
get the tractor, I just sit there. I can just turn all that over, right, and then
Hmm.
burn right back on top of it. The dirt that you get from the composting kind of helps because you're doing two things. First, you're giving yourself kind of a break, a fire break, right? So that
Yeah.
if it was to combust and catch fire, you got something around it that can contain it for a while before it gets
Hmm.
crazy. The
Yeah.
second thing that you're doing is you're mixing it into the soil that you're going to be using. So then you don't have to get a wheelbarrow, mix your biochar, mix your compost, and mix it all together, and then put it in whatever you're going to use it in. You're mixing it all right there in one spot, and then you're using it wherever. Um, and if you dig down deep enough, you're going to find worms in that stuff too, because worms, for
Hmm.
whatever reason, flock to it. So I don't know if it's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
heat or the moisture in the heat, or what it is, but worms are definitely in there, and I guess they're just kind of helping break down whatever isn't broken down by the fire or by natural composting. So
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. That's something again too. I'll have to try. My limitation for my area would be when I could possibly set up something and actually start,
you can do it in a
producing it. I
55
just can't
gallon,
do it during the summertime.
right,
Is kind of what I'm saying. It's year timing during the year. I
right.
live right outside of downtown of my city, and
Uh,
things start smoldering in the middle of the summer, and I'm gonna have every fire truck in the
you
in
can
the
do it
area at
in a
my place. But
55 gallon drum. If you get one of
yeah.
those 55-gallon metal drums and drill you
Hmm.
just a few holes in there, I mean,
Yeah.
really just a couple. You just need a few air holes, not many, right?
Hmm.
You can drill a couple on the bottom and a couple on the top, small ones, just to get the
Yeah.
airflow, and then put the lid back on it. Get you one with the lid on it, and I've seen
Yeah.
guys biochar like that
Right.
in small
That's
drums. So that way the fire's contained, everything's there. You know, people wouldn't think anything of it. They'd think you had a barbecue going on. You know, so
yeah.
I've seen guys do that,
Yeah. Definitely. That's something I have to try for sure.
but it does help. It helps tremendously. And like I said, if you haven't seen that rutabaga, go check it out, man. That thing is, I'm really proud of it, man. That thing's a
Yeah.
monster.
Yeah, dude. I accidentally, and I probably should have checked in. I don't know if there's records or what, but I grew a French breakfast radish
Right?
um about 3 years ago,
Those are
three, 4 years.
little things
Yeah,
like this. They're
just the
just
little
tiny.
tiny little things,
Yeah.
nice little cylindrical
Yep.
type of radish instead of the round type. And so again, as I mentioned before, one of the things I do like to grow out to seed are the radishes. So I'll take all the ones I'll eat for myself as radishes, and then I'll leave a couple to go to seed.
Yep. That's what we
And
do.
soon as it starts getting warm enough in my summertime, those things boom bolt up, and they go right to seed. Well, I had one of them that just refused. It refused to go to seed, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I wish I had a picture I could share with you
Right.
guys, but
Is it
it
on your
got
Instagram?
massive. I mean, I'm not even kidding. It got massive,
That's crazy.
round, huge. It didn't go to seed until a year later.
What?
A year later.
That
It,
is
it was just,
insane.
It looked like it was ripped with all these muscles and was just bulging everywhere and had this. And I was like, oh man, this is crazy. But I never thought about checking or weighing, or I should have done that when it came to that one for sure.
Everything
It might have been a record radish I had that year.
you might have. I mean, do you got any old pictures like on Instagram or anything of it?
I've got some pictures, yeah.
Man, I'll have to check that out because that's awesome.
Yeah, in fact, I do believe it's on my Instagram somewhere.
I'll check that out. Like here, I know all the records for the state, and I know a lot of the records for other states. You know,
Yeah.
But only because like going through last year, I was like, okay, I think this record's obtainable. I think this record's obtainable. Last year, my goal was to break as many state records as possible. I ended up getting like 12 of them or something. No, 11. I got 11. I just got my 12th one the other day for a rutabaga leaf. Well, 12 and 13 for the weight of a rhubarb leaf and the size of the leaf itself. Right, it was massive, and then I ended up growing another one that was even bigger, and I was like, I'm not taking the time to redo that. I'm just going to leave it alone right now because I mean it was bigger, but I mean how much bigger? Maybe an inch or so, 2 inches bigger. But I don't know if
Yeah.
it weighed more. But yeah, records are fun to break and to hold because it challenges you, to
Hmm.
grow bigger and better, and to figure out ways because when you're chasing a record, you're having to hone your skills on that particular fruit or vegetable, whatever it is.
Yep.
You're having to hone those skills. And most people would say, well, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of food, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I disagree with that is because of this. I'm having to hone my skills in to grow that. It's making me a bigger and better grower, knowing how to
Hmm.
get a big one, right? So I can recognize disease better. I can recognize what's going on with my plant better, whether it's nutrient deficiencies or whatever, right? And so that that skill set is not one that a lot of gardeners have. There's a lot of them that can go out here and garden and they can put fertilizer down or do whatever and grow a crop, but there's very few that can grow a big crop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And know what they're doing, right?
Hmm.
And that's what giant growing to me is. It's not necessarily about the records or how big I can get it. Yeah, I like doing that stuff. It's fun, but it's honing my skills on those particular fruits and vegetables so that I can recognize things quicker and better so that when I grow them to eat, I
Yeah.
know what to look for and I know what to do, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
I've been always fascinated with, giant growing giants and all of that. I did an interview with a lady from Washington. Her name's Cindy
Cindy
Tobeck.
Toback. Yep.
Yeah, yep. And she, the stuff she grows and just blows me away, and she sets out every year to break those records, and she set some records on multiple different things. And again, just completely fascinates me that, again, the technical aspect of growing a plant of that level.
Right.
I was in this you know contest last year, and that was one of them, was growing a giant squash. And I had grown a dill Atlantic pumpkin out of my alleyway. And mind you, it was the second pumpkin, because the first one I accidentally, I don't know, I can't even remember how I did it, but I accidentally moved it and broke the stem
Oh yeah.
when it was kind of smaller or just starting to get some size on it. So I had to let that one go and took the secondary fruit. And that secondary fruit got to be, for me, which was a giant, was I think 135 pounds
Right.
for for a pumpkin I grew in my alleyway. It was just people couldn't believe it. It was just, and it's a good size, and people were
Right.
like, oh my god, I can't believe you grew that. But I didn't get into any of that technical stuff. I just put it out there, I just grew it, I let it grow.
Right.
And as I was learning about what to do with this contest, was like burying stems and doing all these different things, cutting
Yep.
off and pruning off suckers and all that
Right.
sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh man, this is really technical.
It's it can be very technical, very tedious. But again,
Yeah, and if
you
I ever had
learn.
any land, I'd probably give it a better shot.
I tell you what, if you want any seeds, let me know. I can hook you up with all kinds of seeds.
Hmm.
I tell you something that would be very fun for you to grow would be giant cucumbers or giant tomatoes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Because you got room for
I
those.
did grow last year a tomato variety that Cindy sent me seeds for, and I think I got mine to 2.5 pounds, two and
That's
a
not
half, three
bad.
pounds. Yeah, it
That's not
wasn't.
bad at all.
That
Yeah.
thing was a monster,
Yeah. That's really good. I
as
mean,
far as
that's
I was concerned.
right.
You
um,
know.
yeah. I mean, that is, that is what it's about, though. It's about sharing it and learning and having fun with growing different things, man.
Hmm.
I like the rutabagas and the giant. I grow giant carrots that I got the state record for a carrot. It was almost 5 pounds, right?
Oh
Well,
yeah.
it was four, almost like 4.5 pounds. So um,
I don't know. I saw
it's
these
just
ones that they're selling from I think it was Baker Creek. I saw. I can't
all
remember
the
the name of
long,
them are, but they're
yeah.
growing them in like cylinders.
Yep. I got
That's
one out there right
is that what
now.
you're doing too?
Yeah, those are
Yes.
Poojies or something like that.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say it starts with an M. I can
Yeah,
remember that much
it's
of it.
like MANPUJAKI, something like that, I
Yeah.
think. Those do really good. I grew some last year. I got some growing this year, but those are for my long carrots, and I do grow those in a cylinder. I actually got them in some 4 and 6 inch pipes out there. Smart Pots is going to make me a 22-foot long pot
Oh wow.
to try to grow the world record in.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
That'll be
yeah,
something.
yeah. That'd be cool, man. I just hope I can do it. you know, but yeah, I mean, it's just about having fun and learning that skill set. Because yeah, I can grow carrots, but growing a giant carrot takes a
Yep.
different set of skills. And I've been able. So, for instance, this is a great, a great way to explain it. Last year, I started growing giant carrots. I was
Hmm.
successful. I took that success and I put it towards growing carrots this past spring. It made me very successful. Whereas before, I could only get some varieties to grow of carrots in certain growing conditions, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't anything that I was doing. It was all the carrot itself, just the variety of carrot and me going out and putting water on it. Nothing else that I'd done, right?
Hmm.
Grow that giant carrot. And I'm like, okay, I know I did this, 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 and this. This is the fertilizers I used. This is how many times I watered, et cetera, et cetera. Applied that to those out there. And I had a much, much better year this year growing just regular carrots to eat. And so that's what it helps you do. It helps you hone those skills in to be able to be more successful for your actual gardening.
Yeah. Let's see. I think I just found a picture of that radish here. I don't know if I can. But does it let you share screens on there?
Yeah. Let me see. I don't remember. I don't know how. I do know people do it. If you pop it up, then I'll hit the three thing here. There's a
Yeah.
third person thing here. Yeah, there we go. Dag on. That
That's a
thing's
French breakfast. That's only like about half the size that it got to.
that is insane. Cause I got French breakfasts out there right now. Hey Jay,
Hmm.
do me a favor. Go out where the radishes grow, where the corn is, right? There's that row of radishes, right? You're going to see these little tiny ones about that long sticking up out of the ground. Pull one of them and bring it in here for me so I can show a comparison of that radish and these, what they
Yeah, I
typically
couldn't.
look like.
Yeah, and it's still got even larger than that. I mean, I couldn't believe it.
That's insane. I mean, it's just incredibly big for a French breakfast. I don't know where the headlamp is, babe. Here, take my phone.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, it's. I was gonna say it's getting late over there, so it's getting pretty dark out, huh?
Yeah. You'll see them. You can't miss them. They're sticking out the ground about an inch or two. They're little round, or not round. They're
Cylindrical.
cylindrical,
Yeah.
right? Long, skinny ones, kind of like your pinky finger or your thumb. All right. Grab me just one or two of them, please. Yeah, man, that's crazy. And you said that grew for an entire year before it seeded.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all in all, I grew it. About year and 3 months or so, because of course, it took about a year for it to actually start to go to seed, and then another 3 months or so in order to develop the seed from it.
Right. Now, have you grown seeds from that then, I guess?
Yeah, and nothing, all I got was just regular old French
So
breakfast radishes. Did
they bolted the same
bolted and
time.
there, yeah, they
That's
just
weird, ain't it?
I didn't get anything special. I was like, oh, these seeds are gonna be special.
Right. I would have thought the same thing. I would have thought they would have been more heat tolerant or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's just crazy.
Yeah, and again too, like I said, our summers here are just hundreds, and I mean through the 100-degree weeks that we would have here, just throughout the summer. Just I mean, I was just blown away at how long it just kept going and kept going, and then by the end of summer, it was still growing. I was
Right.
like, what? Am I have to wait until next year for this to seed now? Because it's going to get cold and it's going to be right what, it's optimal conditions it likes. And again,
Right.
through the freezing winter and everything, had no problem, continue growing. And yeah, and like I said, it probably got about twice that size. I just can't find a picture of the full size one right now. But
That's still just that's insane though.
mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Hey, just go grab that for me. Leave the cat alone, Kira. That let's see here. Just try to go through these
Yeah.
comments real quick.
Yeah, just want to also shout out to Jay. Thanks for joining us here, man. Jay's a regular
Oh, okay, cool,
my
awesome,
live streams too. He's
awesome. Thanks,
actually
man.
he actually moderates my live streams for me. So
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, thanks
It's
Jay
always
for
good to
showing
have
up.
new people in here too. For me, yeah.
Yeah, Jay's the man. And also too, who was it that said that too?
South Florida sunshine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was saying they liked my name and they
yeah.
subscribed to the channel. So thanks, I really appreciate that. Yeah, and has interviewed some great gardeners. Oh yeah, that's again too, kind of as I was talking about at the beginning, one of my favorite things about what I get, what I do is being able to apply some of the journalism background and get to interview a lot of these really awesome gardeners out there. And again is also just really inspiring, and how inspiring I find the gardening community ultimately is that just every, and it's why when you approached me to be on this live stream with you too, it's just like, absolutely, everybody's always been absolutely. And even if it's the, bigger gardeners out there, with their bigger channels and stuff, in
Right.
fact, one of my good friends is one of the original YouTube gardening guys, John Kohler.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Man,
and
I
we got
love him. Grow
he's
your
one of my
greens. You know that dude's
mhm.
awesome, man.
Yeah, in fact, I just it was and he was kind of the person who kind of inspired me on that level too, because it was my first year of doing my YouTube channel, and I was going to reward myself and the viewers of my channel. And mind you, they were only just a couple hundred, I think, by the time I ended my first season.
Right.
And so I went to, my reward was to go to the Heirloom Exposition in Santa Rosa, California, the
For Baker's Creek kind of
Baker
deal,
Creek
right?
Heirloom Exposition.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I went there, and I knew, John speaks at all of those every year. I was like, oh, and I'm going to go meet John Kohler. This is going to be awesome. In fact, I got a picture back here somewhere of when I met him all fanboy style, and I was like, oh, dude, John, you take a picture, and, shaking his hand and everything. And then next thing I went to the next couple of years and got to go and meet up with him and do videos with him at his house and all that sort of stuff. And he's become a really good friend of mine, through
That's
all of
awesome.
this sort of stuff.
He always seemed like a really cool dude.
Oh, he's awesome. He's
So
awesome.
here's a
There
regular.
you go.
Well, that's a normal, I guess. It's
Mm-hmm.
somewhat bigger. You know what I mean? It's not huge like that one,
Yeah.
but typically they're a little bit smaller in this. But that's a French
Yeah.
breakfast.
You can tell when it starts, the colors. Starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Stretching a little bit. But yeah,
yep.
that's a good. I love my favorite radish. I've grown
Yep.
all sorts of radishes. French breakfasts are the tastiest, my favorite.
They are. They're
Like,
really, really good. We just started growing radishes here this year,
yeah.
and man, I got on this kick, and I was, man, these are really good. So I start not picking them,
Hmm.
fermenting them and stuff.
Oh
And,
yeah.
and then I go
Also,
to the store and I bought like 50 different varieties. And the wife was like, you get on this kick and then you don't stop till you, I can't help it, man. Like I done tried the wasabi radishes, all kinds of different
oh
radishes.
yeah. Have you grown them out to seed?
I have. Yep.
Yeah. So you harvest the seed pods,
Yep.
young seed pods,
Yep.
because those are really tasty too. So
Oh,
actually,
you eat them. You
yeah,
eat them?
actually eat them. Yeah,
Oh, no,
get
I
the
didn't
young
eat them.
ones before the seeds really get developed inside. You take the young seed pods and you eat them like green beans.
Oh, okay,
And they're
cool,
just,
man. I have to
oh,
try
dude,
that
they're
out.
just good. And
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that you don't think of a lot, and I had to learn that myself when it came to radishes because I like the radish themselves, and I harvest those up, and then I let a couple of them go to seed one year, and I watched a video where someone was like, "Oh, you got to eat the seed pods," and went out there. I was like, "Okay, find a couple of them and tried it." I was like, "Oh man!" So
Are
that
they
just really changed the routine that I do. So I harvest up a bunch of them that I take from the bunches that I grow, and
right?
then I'll have about 5 or 6 that I allow to go to seed, and then maybe one of those I'll let go to seed for seed, and then those other like 3 or 4 I'll actually harvest all of the young seed pods as they're developing off of them, and
Okay.
use those too as well.
Do they
It's
taste
good.
like a radish or do they taste like something of their
Yeah,
own?
it's kind of like a real light radish taste to them.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's cool,
yeah,
man. I
but
have to
they're
try
really
that out.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely
yeah.
gonna have to try that out because I was actually growing these to let some of these go to seed. Because I love saving seeds. I not only do I like saving them for ourselves, but I also sell seeds. You know what I mean? That's kind of
Hmm.
a little hustle on the side that I got. I
Yeah.
mean, and it does fairly well for us. Um, so I grew them out. I've got some black ones that I'm growing, some black radishes. Have you ever tried those? Any of the black? These are black Spanish
Oh,
radish.
Spanish radish. Yeah, I
Yep.
grew a couple of those. Yeah, those
Did
are
you like them?
yeah, they're not too bad. I think they're just like a little bit more of like, I guess they're in between, maybe more like a daikon style,
Okay.
maybe,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So a little bit longer growing season,
Yep.
that
55
sort of thing.
days. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Versus, I mean, you grow radish
18 to
25,
25.
yeah,
Yep.
25 days, 20 days.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Mhm, yeah, and again, too, I think that radishes are one of those great ones that if you're teaching kids about gardening or you're bringing the kids into the garden too, I always just say peas and beans because they sprout quickly and they're really easy, that sort of thing. But something that actually grows to maturity in such a fast pace, because kids, fast, they want, their
Yeah.
minds are
You got to
moving,
keep
you
them
know what I mean? So you got to keep them interested. So radishes, I think, are one of those perfect things to grow for kids too.
right. Yeah. It definitely, the kids love going out there. I've got videos of my daughter. She's
I'll
my
go
little
ahead and
garden
take
helper
that off
going
right
out there
here.
just grabbing, you know what I mean? And love just wanted to pick everything. I was like, we got to leave some of those there. Some of them wasn't done yet, but she loved growing the radishes, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Moringa leaves have a horseradish and grass had a baby flavor. I like them
like a
dry.
horseradish and grass. Hmm. Yeah, well, moringa. Yeah, I mean, that's something I should try growing myself too. It's
I've been
one of
wanting to
those
try
kind of
that
like
too.
one of those superfoods they talk
Yep.
about and all of
And
that.
John
But
talks about that a lot, the
hmm,
moringa,
yep,
and I guess it's pretty easy to grow just about anywhere you live.
yeah, and
So
they grow amazingly fast too. So
right,
they're another one of those just next thing you know, you got a 20-foot tall tree.
right. Now you mentioned baby greens, and I want to kind of talk, or what do you? I guess what is it called? Not baby greens, but baby sprouts or whatever, right? Like you're eating like yeah,
Microgreens.
yeah, microgreens. There you go.
Hmm.
So are you eating like the sunflower microgreens and stuff like that in the
Hmm.
wintertime?
Sunflower shoots, pea shoots, radish as well too. Put some flavor in there.
Okay.
Um, you know, broccoli. A lot of the things that they'll get. Broccoli's a good one because um, you get one of those heads and you just let it go to seed. Those things produce so many seed pods, tons of seed pods, so you can get a lot of seed out of broccoli plants, and
Right.
so that's one of the big main ones that I'll do. So again, I'll grow several just to take the crowns off, and then a couple of them I'll let those let those crowns just go right to seed, and then collect the seeds so that I can grow the microgreens later on
That's
as well
cool.
too. I'll purchase some other varying different varieties of some things that I don't grow myself and stuff. But I think that's, as much seed as you can produce yourself, especially from plants that produce a lot of seed, just make great microgreens. There's a lot of things.
Yeah.
And
So
easy to grow. I mean, those are another things for beginners too. Microgreens are just you don't even really need soil. You can put them on paper towels and
right,
grow them off paper towels, because all you're really looking for is just a couple of inches of growth.
right.
Basically whatever, and you don't really need nutrients either, because you're only growing so
Everything's there.
big. And yeah, that seed pod itself has the energy that it needs to get that big,
Right.
and then you're just cutting those down and using them. I recommend highly, especially for beginner gardeners too, is you know, uh,
What have you
supplementing what they do in the wintertime with microgreens.
right? What have you noticed, like as far as like health benefits or whatever? Like you hear a lot of talk about it, right? But
Hmm.
have you noticed, like, oh yeah, I ate that and it does me pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, or is it just kind of like, it's just something to eat? You know, I mean,
Yeah,
is
well,
all the hype really
I believe that all basically, all things that you're growing for yourself in a great organic environment are superfoods.
okay?
I mean, anything. If
Right,
you're growing
right,
them yourself, you're getting, not just the varying varieties that you can get, but you're getting a lot more nutrient dense food than what you're going to get out of a grocery store and these developed bread things that are all really just bred for size and storage.
right.
They're not bred for nutrients, and they're not bred for flavor and taste and all
Yep.
that sort of stuff. So if you're growing for your own, you're getting more variety and you're getting a lot more nutrient dense food. And again too, it's kind of like, before I started growing my own food, I didn't think about any of this sort of things when it comes to just purchasing food out of the store, and what
Right.
that means. When I started growing food for myself, first it was, like I said, the light bulb hit when I grew those first cucumbers, and then I started, learning and watching more videos, especially John's videos. When I
Right.
caught on to John early on in my gardening experience, that's when I started learning and figuring out more about what eating nutrient dense food and food that you grow for yourself really does for you.
Yep.
And so I kind of went on this progression now where I started changing up my diet and started changing up what I'm doing as far as consuming food. um, I've never, like John, John's just a super eater when it comes to things. He's a raw vegan,
Right.
or not even a vegan, but he's a raw. He eats it, most things all raw, and all,
Yep.
vegetables and a lot of things that he grows and juices and does that stuff. I've tried to incorporate a lot of that stuff, but there's a lot of other things I like. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
It's like
Yep.
my goal was always to get like to an 80% plant-based diet. You
There you
know,
go.
and so I've kind of over time been able to reach that sort of thing, and growing and getting more things that I can to incorporate into my diet and all of that too. And to me, I literally, I feel better. I you know I don't know. I just hear from other people, who say that I don't look the age that I am,
There you
that
go.
sort of thing. So, in the long run, over these last 10 years and changing that sort of stuff up, maybe I've kind of helped myself in the aging process and all of that stuff too.
Right.
So I don't, and these are just things that I believe and I think of myself, in the sort of things that I've done myself, and
Well, I mean, that's good to know, because everybody hears the hype, but
hmm
nobody hears yes or no. Like you either have the diehard people that just absolutely believe it 100%, and they're just completely convinced, but it's they're not able to commute, or it's communicate why they're convinced. Does that make sense?
yeah,
And so what you've
yep,
just said is is absolutely great because you're able to communicate why you think it's helping you. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
stuff. I remember John is super huge into the anthocyanins, right? Like
Hmm.
that was one of the first things I
Reds.
learned from
Get
him.
those red greens,
Yep,
get the reds,
yep,
wherever you can find reds in your plant, the base foods and all of that is, yeah, the
yeah.
anthocyanins. And
So he
I
was
was
big
just
into
I
that,
was
and
just
that's
interviewing him a couple weeks ago, and we were having a conversation about that. And I was like, I buy mostly like red leaf lettuce or I and grow,
yep.
all these sort of reds, like this Merlot lettuce I got from Baker Creek. It's
That's
just
I grow that
amazing.
one. Yeah, it's
Oh, I
awesome.
love that stuff. It's
Yep.
so good.
And the
Yeah.
solar flare is pretty good too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've seen that one as well
Yep.
too. Yep. But and that's the thing too. And I'm not as hardcore, I guess
Right,
you'd say,
right,
because like I said, there's things that I enjoy. I cheat, if you
right,
would call it, you know what I mean? But I allow myself that a little bit,
right,
if I'm maintaining this much over here and doing the right things this much, I can do a little bit here and there of the things that I
right,
like
right.
to do. There's just things that I grew up with and things that, I just really enjoy,
Like a pizza every now and then, or
pizza for
chicken.
sure,
Yeah,
pizza for sure is definitely one of those. And
Yep,
and so I allow myself that sort of stuff, but for the most part, I try to push, a better sense of my diet,
right,
based on the things that I've learned about this, the whole food system and the processed foods and all that sort of stuff. I try to eliminate as much of that as possible
right,
so that I can, again, too, it's all about the idea of, treating yourself like your body like a castle, right?
right. Absolutely. It's your
There's only so
temple.
many things you want to let inside your castle.
That's right. That's right. And,
And
and
so, yeah.
and if you think about it, you didn't really hear in the not that they probably didn't know what it would have been called if they did have, but let's say back in the 1800s, 1700s, 1600s, somebody had cancer. You really didn't hear of many people dying from cancer or what they would have maybe considered cancer back then
Hmm.
because they did live
Yep.
such a better lifestyle than what we are accustomed to. They wanted chicken, they went out and killed it and cooked it that
Yep.
day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And they picked out of their own garden, they canned their own food. They had a much better system than what we have today because times were not, they didn't live in a throwaway society, a
Yep.
microwave society, where we
Hmm.
all got to have it right now. They took their time to cook their meals, to grow their food. They lived healthier and better lives. And really, I think our biggest problem here is we live too fast paced. And if we
Yep.
could slow it down to where we could grow our own food, cook our own food, we'd all be a lot healthier. We wouldn't
Yep.
hear probably so much of these, these cancer words and other things because we wouldn't be eating such this processed food with all these different preservatives that are not needed and in many cases not even legal in other countries. Just here in America, like the FDA is like, yeah, let's slap a label on it because we got
Hmm.
paid some money.
Yeah, I truly believe that, and when it comes down to it, it's just, I think there's just a ton of evidence that's out there, and it's
Yep.
like you said, historically, cancers have really always existed.
Right.
It's just, that sort of thing. When you start looking at the numbers and how how those things have inflated so much over time, and then you start looking at those changes that we made as humans,
Yep.
like you said, developing faster lifestyle, the industrial revolution, if you want to go back then, and
Right.
pollution, pollutants and things like that started contributing to things. But really, when you think about it, and it just makes so much sense that one of the things that we're doing day in and day out, every single day of our lives, is eating and
Yep.
consuming. And then when you start looking at those things that those again, trying to find the right words to
Yeah. No, I
explain
know.
it, but when you see so many people affected by so many different types of cancers now, and those sort
Yep.
of things are just growing, and the numbers are growing, it's just easy to be able to look at what we're consuming as culprits
Yep.
for that sort of stuff, you
Yep.
know, and again too, I mean, I heard about it, and like I said, John being one of those people, many other people, as I started getting into gardening and started growing my own food and learning about the food system a little bit more, and started hearing that stuff. It just and so many testimonials, anecdotal evidence from tons of people who are like, I changed to a plant-based diet and this happened, or
Right.
I did this with, a more whole foods diet that, I was growing, maintaining myself, whether, even if you're eating meat,
Right.
you got your own chickens in your backyard that you're
Yep.
feeding yourself. You know what I mean? You've got, pigs and whatever else that it might
Right.
be, that you've got goats if you're taking milk and dairy and those
Yep.
sort of things that you're feeding and doing yourself. And if you've got an eye on what they're consuming, so what you're consuming, that
That's
sort of
right.
stuff. And you start hearing the evidence, and then it's one thing to hear it, and then you start applying that.
Yep.
And you start doing that in your own lifestyle, in your own life, and then you start feeling it.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's something I know now. I know because I've done this stuff myself, that I know I feel better. I know, I know that my skin looks better
Right.
because of it. Um, and it just my bones.
Right.
I
Right.
mean, I was like 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, as I was first started getting into gardening, man, I get up out of a chair, man. I was again too. I'm almost 50 years old. I'll admit it to everybody right now. I'm almost
Right.
50 years old, and 10 years ago, I'm 40 years old. And I was just starting to feel the lower back pain,
Right.
the getting up out of a chair, in my knees, oh, the feet,
Yep.
oh man, you got to walk a few steps in order to get your feet back to not
Right.
aching so much. But then I started changing my diet, started doing that sort of stuff, and again, aiming for this higher percentage of a more nutrient dense diet, and I just started feeling the changes. Here I am 10 years later, and older, and I feel like I'm actually 10 years younger.
Right.
I
Well,
feel
I
like
mean,
I'm,
I wouldn't have thought you were
I
almost
feel
50.
like I'm 30 again. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Well, I really wouldn't have thought you were almost 50. I would have gave you, late 30s, early 40s. So, you
Right.
know,
See, there you go. You don't need to know much more, right?
right. Exactly. Exactly. So,
I
and
hear from
even
people all the time, and I'm like, you know what? When I tell them how old I am, I'm like, yeah, it's. I'm telling you, it's got something to do with this.
it
You
has
know.
to, it has to be something like that. And, it has been this journey because I've not been on it very long, but, we've, over the past, uh, I'd say probably 2020, I started paying attention to it. 2021, I started changing, right? But it wasn't until
Hmm.
last year that I really took a deep dive into it and said, hey, you know what? We're growing root crops.
Yeah.
We're growing Swiss chard. We're growing spinach. We're growing all the
Yeah.
things because I was raised. You grew green beans, you grew squash, you grew peppers and tomatoes. That was it. That was
Yeah.
all you grew, you know.
Yep.
And I just said, there's just so much more.
Hmm.
And why do I want to condition my kids to think like that and be like that? Right. So I
Yep.
started, going into the root crop thing. It didn't really work out real good. But then this year we're doing it and we're doing it in abundance. I mean, I've got beets out there that are just phenomenal and the kids
Yeah.
love them. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll eat a whole jar of them now all by themselves and like, hey, can we have more?
Yeah.
Well,
Not
we
only
don't
that, you
really
got
want
those greens too.
right. The
Get
tops
them
of them,
young. Oh
yep,
yeah.
radish top. You can eat radish tops. You can eat beet tops. You can eat
Carrot
the
tops.
carrot tops. All that
Yep.
stuff, man.
Hmm.
Wonderful sources of nutrients and just good food that people legitimately don't think to eat. They cut it off and throw it
Yep.
away. And I mean, they're like you can eat only so many greens, right?
Mhm.
But you can give that to your animals. We give it to the
Yeah.
chickens, the goats, the pigs, and the rabbits. All of them get that. So what we're eating, they're eating. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I know it's good food. I know when I harvest them, they're going to be good food. You know what I mean? So it's that whole circle of life and everything that we're putting in our bodies. We know what it ate. You know what I mean? We know where it
Yep.
come from, and that in itself
Exactly.
is a great feeling too. To know
Yep.
that I did this, I raised this,
Mhm.
I grew this, whatever, and I
Yeah.
love
And
doing it.
again, too. I mean, the my next phase and my next step in some way down the road, hopefully, is to have a larger piece of property and to be able to homestead and do that sort of stuff,
That'd be
raise
great.
my own chickens, do that sort of stuff. And again, too, like you said, it comes down to the fact that what those animals are eating, so what ultimately you're eating when it comes down to it. And you ain't got to worry about all of that steroids that they need to put into these animals in order to keep so many of them together in a
Right.
it just, when I think of some of that stuff, it just really kind of like, I never thought about it before though. I
Well, I
spent
mean,
up until like 10 years ago not even once thinking about all that sort of stuff, and until I
nobody
started
does.
learning about it, I'm like, what have I been doing? why
Right.
didn't I why didn't I figure this out before, but
You
I'm
go
glad
in to
that I
buy
know
a pack.
now.
Well, you go in there and you buy a pack of chicken, and it says all kinds of antibiotics on it, right? I mean, just
Hmm.
antibiotics posted all over, and you don't
Yeah.
think nothing about it. You just buy the chicken, bring it home, and eat it. And then, I mentioned to my wife, last year, I said, "Why are we eating this? What do you mean? What else are we going to eat?
Yeah.
We got chickens out here. Why
Yeah.
are we eating this when I've
Hmm.
got chickens out there that I could
Yeah.
eat, or quail that I could raise? Because we raise quail now, which is
Yeah.
really, really good. Not
Yeah.
just good for you, and the quail eggs are better than chicken eggs, but they grow much faster, eat less food, so it's more
Yeah.
economically friendly and all that. But why are we doing it? What do you mean? It's loaded with steroids. Tell me that chicken breast is anywhere near the size that we'd get out of one of our full grown birds out there,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, it's 10 times bigger, right? I mean, it's just what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
That's as big
One of
as
the
one of our
first
chickens.
one of the first people, I think it was like, again, early on as I'm just getting started gardening. Again, big fan of YouTube. One of these people I found who's, just a monster on homesteading and YouTube right now is Justin Rhodes.
Yep.
I was watching them when they first started their YouTube channel. They
Right.
had 20,000 viewers, and I was watching him, with his kid on the backpack going through and showing, talking about all this stuff, food, growing your own food, raising your own animals and doing all this sort of stuff. And as he started with this whole permaculture chickens, that sort of
Right.
thing. And to me, it's just like, man, I'm telling you again, too, that is the next phase of whatever I do. If I ever have the opportunity, is to build up my own little homestead and raise my own things and do that sort of stuff, when it comes down to it.
I hope you get to
I'm
it,
not as
man.
much, I mean, I still hold on to some of the chicken and do this, and I quail and things like that and stuff. I'd definitely be, open to,
Right.
but there are a lot of meat I have kind of pulled back from, in
Right.
general,
Yep.
that sort of thing. But just the chicken, some dairy, these are just
Yep.
things that I just can't I can't
I've
seem to
got
step
I've
can't
got
seem to
goats.
step away from,
Yep.
but
We've got goats here that we're going to use for the dairy. We raise
mhm.
pigs. We don't eat a lot of pork here.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I mean
Pork,
it
another one though too. If I was to cheat, there definitely would be some pork
right,
probably as
right.
well.
But I mean it's very rare that we eat a lot of pork.
Hmm.
Um, it's mostly chicken, quail, fish, around
Yeah,
here. Beef here and there. I'm allergic to beef.
yeah,
I like it, but I don't like what it does to me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
try to stay away from that. But I'll eat a steak here and there, and then pork we
Hmm.
eat here and there. It's not like a huge we got to have it, but it's a nice treat
Yeah,
to have here and there. But
yeah,
it's I just as far as health goes, more chicken, quail, rabbit,
yeah,
you know, goat milk, stuff like that. I think that's more of what we're going to try to hone in on. But
yeah.
yeah, I
And
mean,
again, too, like I said, I've broken it down to to an I think I'm probably by this point now plus 80, maybe even 80 to 90% of my diet being plant based versus versus incorporating meats and stuff, and
right,
which I'm not against completely, like
right,
Justin Rhodes, he
yep,
he'll do complete meat diets,
yep,
totally, carnivorous diets that he calls them and stuff, which
right,
you know I mean, I'm totally not against that sort of thing, especially in the point of what he teaches and talks about too, is
right,
that he's raising this stuff himself. he's feeding these animals himself, so he knows what him and his family are, are consuming. And I think that's, one of the bigger things, getting away from that commercial grower type of situation,
Yep.
and that sort of stuff. I think is really great. But I'm an advocate of high plant-based diets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's just like you said, so much evidence that's there that says,
Hmm.
this is
Yep.
our ancestors were eating more plant than they were meat.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they would hunt and get whatever they could, but you
Hmm.
think about what made up the majority of their what they ate. It was plant
Yep.
based. It was
Another one too is that they ate less too.
yeah, a whole lot less.
Hmm.
A
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
lot less.
really, I do a one meal a day diet thing, and
Yep.
that's usually what it used to be, because it used to be everybody did the work during the day,
Yep.
and then everybody gathered around and had that meal in the evening time.
That's all I eat is
Yep.
evening. I don't eat. I
Yep.
wake up straight outside, do my thing all day, come in at 8:30, 9 o'clock, sit down, eat my
Hmm.
dinner, go take a shower, go to bed every
Yep.
day. And
That's it.
my kids are like, "How do you eat once a day?" I don't get hungry.
Yeah.
And even when I eat in the evening time, majority of the time it's not because I'm hungry. It's out of
Hmm.
necessity to build up for the next day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with being hungry.
Never been a breakfast person, but there were times where I got myself to, I was heavy snacking and doing all this sort of stuff, around the idea of maybe a lunch and a dinner, and then all
Right.
this other stuff around it and all that. But again, too, there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. This is anecdotal as well, but I know from what I feel and how things have worked for me that those things have made a marked difference in what and how I feel in my day-to-day life.
Yep.
So I to me that's what I recommend.
Yeah. And and Jay says, for health reasons, multiple snacks a
Yeah.
day is best for him. And it would
Some
probably
people
be
have to
better
have
for
that insulin charge throughout
right.
the day
It would
too,
probably
man.
be
Keep
better
in.
for me to do too. You know what I mean? Just because
Mhm.
my wife keeps on going, if you don't watch out, you keep on doing this till you get, some kind of bad word, right? The D word,
Mhm.
right? And I'm
Yep.
like, I've done this for 10 years now. I
Yep.
don't get hungry.
Yep.
How can you eat when you don't feel hungry? But maybe, because I have played with the idea, okay, well, if I sit down and eat beets or carrots or peas, what I mean, here's the thing. When stuff's out there harvesting, they think I
Yep.
ain't out there snacking all day. You know what I mean? I gotta try this,
Yep.
gotta try that, you know what I mean? Make
Yep.
videos, try it. But for the most part, it's not. And I probably should start to incorporate something throughout the day,
And if your snacks are good, wholesome, nutrient dense food coming right out of the garden you're growing, it's not bad at all either.
Right, right.
3 meals a day for people if that's what they want to do, and it's all good nutrient rich food.
Exactly.
Absolutely,
Yep.
it, to me, through my experience, it's just a no brainer anymore.
Yep. Well, look, man,
Mhm.
I know it's getting late for you. You've been on here almost 2 hours, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I do want to kind of wrap up things. We'll let these guys go, and then you can wrap up
Yeah,
when we
absolutely.
cut them loose. But
Yeah,
let me go over this real quick, man. It was just great having you on. I would like to get you on again sometime
absolutely.
and just kind of talk again because it was a blast, man. And I think there's some other subjects that we kind of touched on for a minute, but then, kind of left that I would really
Yeah,
like to get you
yeah.
back on and talk more
I could
about
talk
more
all
in
day
depth.
about all this sort of stuff.
I can too, man. I absolutely
Yeah.
can too.
Yeah, and
Um,
definitely too, when it comes down to it, we're reworking some things as far as segments and what we were doing with our show, the Let's Get Growing show on Saturdays at 11 a.m. for any of your audience who wants to come join and check us out. We're interviewing awesome, great gardeners all the time,
yep.
but we reworking some segments and all that stuff too. And as we get that all set up and figured out, I'll definitely love to have you on the show as well too.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I'd love to come
Hmm.
on. I'd absolutely love to come
Absolutely.
on. So next week on August 8th, we have Acorn Creek Farmstead going to be on with us. So make sure y'all come and check that out. August 15th, we have Tony from Wakefield Biochar. We've already talked about biochar, so we won't dive into that now. Um,
Mhm.
Then August 22nd, we have Ange Ferrero Fanning, which is Angie Ferrero Fanning. She's real big on Instagram. If I don't know if you've seen her on there or not, but she's got a huge Instagram over there. It's really great homesteading. Ange Ferraro, Ferraro Fanning, Fanning homestead.
Right.
She'll be on August 22nd. August 29th, we have Jesus Loving Homestead with Nathan and Carmen. They're going to be on with us. And then September 5th, we have Nicole Smith Gardening. September 12th, we have Chase from Trophy Smack. Trophy Smack is the one that is sponsoring our YouTube challenge this year with a big title belt. Looks like a big WWF belt, right?
Oh, awesome.
For the guy who grows the biggest pumpkin this year.
Awesome.
So that was pretty cool. We're going to have them on September 12th. September 19th, we have Sandy from Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming, Arizona. September 26th, we have Randall from Extreme Gardening and Travis Ginger, who holds the North American record for the giant pumpkin at 2,560 pounds. He's going to be coming on with us, and we're going to talk about what all we have at the end of the season, or pretty close to the end of the season. October 3rd, we have Yogi Hollow Farm. Lisa's going to be on. October 10th, I had somebody scheduled, but I realized after I scheduled them, I'm going to be on vacation that week. So we'll have to resume on October 17th. So I'm going to see if I can't get Kettle Kitchen to come on October 17th, and we'll resume there. October 24th through December 26th is completely open. If anybody here wants to come on our live stream, we'd love to have you. You can be a small channel, big channel. I don't care. You want to come on, I want to have you on. I want to interview you, and let's see what you got growing on at your place. All right. So, guys, we appreciate you all watching. We are so thankful that Enoch come on tonight and hung out with us. It's been a great time. I hope we can get him back on soon, because there's a lot that I would like to cover that we didn't get to cover tonight. But thank you again, man. And guys, we're gonna cut out of here. It's been a great time. So from the Hollers and Hills of West Virginia, we'll see you next time right here in the Hollers and Hills of West Virginia. See y'all.